Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, a shout out show. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much in advance for joining us. We're doing a bit of a mock up here. Let me apologize in advance, brothers and sisters. I was on a commercial shoot today and I left a lot of my equipment that I use for the live stream at the studio. So I hope that this suffices for everybody, at least just for today. And we'll get back to our normal standard operating procedure. Blame it on you, brother. I was tired. I was not paying attention. But I am very, very confident that when you see the commercial that we shot for this particular client, our newest client, as a matter of fact, Convenient Urgent Care, I think that you will enjoy yourself. Okay, a couple things I want to get off the top. First of all, a lot of duas going out to Kentucky. Massive storm that happened out there, historic storm that happened out there. I recently done a Friday reminder about a place called Paducah, Kentucky, and just south of that, a place called Mayfield, southeast of it, was actually obliterated. I mean, they lost, I think it's over 60 lives and counting right now. So we want to make sure at the top of the show that we definitely send out our duas to those folks. I mean, this type of stuff, you just can't explain it. When the weather goes left, when it's used to going right, and I tell people, these are the times whereby you really, really need to take time and get to understand the people around you, your neighbors, your friends, and let them know how they feel about you. I had a great week, brothers and sisters. Got to kick it with my family in Milwaukee, and Chicago, and Dallas, Houston. I mean, this was a great weekend on a personal level. Shout out to Brother Mustafa and Sadir, who are leaving the Houston Muslim community, going to Shreveport, Louisiana. God bless you. I know everybody in Houston misses you. Everybody around the country misses you. Our loss is Shreveport's gain. Okay, brothers and sisters, let's get to work. Discussing poverty economics. One of the things that I've learned over the years, brothers and sisters, is in the place or the marketplace of competition in terms of business, in terms of business strategy. We're talking about expansion. We're talking about pricing. We're talking about marketing. We're talking about public relations. We're talking about branding. There is this whole aspect of economics. As a part of what continues to be an evolving situation behind COVID, I have branded this thing called poverty economics. Now, the reason I call it poverty economics, brothers and sisters, is because I want folks to know that poverty does not necessarily mean that you're poor. Okay? Poverty does not necessarily mean that you're poor. It means that you are below a certain standard. That's why they have a poverty line. They don't have a poor line. It's somebody adjusted, adjusted algorithm in terms of what you should have as opposed to what you actually have. Okay? And I want to make sure that people understand that poor people are amongst the hardest working people in the world. Sadly, they work with huge levels of urgency, working to make, if you will. And I also say, that hardest working people, but they're the bravest people in the world as well. So I want to give a shout out to anybody out there who's going out there every day in, day out, trying to put food on the table. We know it's rough. The economy is tough and all these type of things. And while there are jobs out there, there are not a lot of jobs where you have a sustainable wage. So my salute goes out to these people. But I want to talk about this scope of poverty economics. Now, the thing about poverty economics, brothers and sisters, is the fact that successful businesses, are successful a lot of times because they drive other businesses out of the marketplace. Let me say this again. Businesses a lot of times are successful businesses because their strategy is not so much we're going to compete on brand, compete on quality. They are strategically aligned to make sure that they drive business out of the marketplace. And driving those businesses out of the marketplace, brothers and sisters, is what I want to talk about. It is the new scope of poverty economics that's going on, particularly in the United States. We're not talking about it enough, but we're going to talk about it today here on the Shout Out Show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Satana, let's get rolling. we're back. Thank you guys for coming back. Listen, I want to give a shout out to a really good friend of mine, Brother Maurice. Brother Maurice has some health issues. Brother Maurice, I'm going to get in touch with you. I found out from your brother that you're not doing well. But you know me. We always been dogged in our pursuits to make sure that each other and our families are taken care of. So I'm going to make sure that I give you a call. I did actually give you a call, but now I know why you didn't give me a call back. It's funny how that works. That's number one. And number two is, brothers and sisters, the conversation we're going to have about poverty economics. It's a very open conversation. I don't think I do a good enough job of trying to connect people with economics and their financial status, financial opportunities. And I want folks to really, really understand that this is a big puzzle, if you will, that we have to put the pieces together. And the pieces are very fine-tuned. So if I miss something today, please forgive your brother. I will try and pick up the slack and find it and put it in another conversation. But poverty economics, just poverty on its own is a very large conversation. Economics is the other one. But before we get started, I want to make sure that we give a shout out to our Shout Out Show family, the people who come here, who actually make the show. Like I say, I'm the host. I am the host of the show. However, I don't own the platform. I don't. It's the people that come here on the show. Some of these subjects have been generated by people on the show, and I'm proud to say that I've been happy to cover them. Not just I cover them, I was happy to cover them. So without further ado, we're going to bring our Shout Out Show family. Okay, so of course, what is the Shout Out Show without Sister Reed? What's going on, Sister Reed? We appreciate you coming on the show. Sister Reed is an entrepreneur. We've been blessed on the show to see Sister Reed go into business for herself and take that leap of faith. And we're going to talk about economics. Yes, definitely. Sincere condolences and prayers. Thank you, Sister Reed, to our Kentucky brothers and sisters. Also, our brothers and sisters in Arkansas. We'll make sure we shout them out as well. Peace and blessings to you and your family. Derek and Juan, make sure you give them my best wishes. Thank you, Sister Reed. Next up, All Talk, Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. A Canadian ambassador to the show. Wow, alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alto, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. I mean, what we're going to talk about is also happening in Canada about poverty economics, man. And I'm going to try and break down some of the characteristics of it. There's no book out there. It's called Doing Business, but it's the way you do business. And I want to make sure that I touch the right bases and give the right tone. So, Alto, thank you so much for coming on the show. Next up, we got my little brother who's chauffeuring his brother around in Milwaukee, trying to make sure he gets to the match, make sure he eats, has breakfast, has lunch. Much love to you, JT. Man, I hope you're doing well. Peace and blessings to you and the family. My nephew, hope you're doing well. My sister-in-law, hope you're doing well. And my other mom, Sister Maisie, Eunice, and Vivian. Hope everybody's doing well in the Thomas family. Big shouts out. All right. Appreciate you, Doc, for coming on the show. Next up, what's the show without a consultant producer? A pretty bad show, particularly this day. Thank you. Again, shout out to Sister Satana, who is diligent, hardworking. We're looking for some big things coming out of Sister Satana moving forward. You see her behind the scenes, but I know she's working on certain skill sets. She's trying to put her own program together. And I want everybody to know that when we do it, when she rolls it out, I want all of us to make sure we give her full-throated support for what she's doing. What's going on, Brother Bilal? Appreciate you, man. He said, salams for the Salahuddins. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. Thank you so much for popping on the show. We appreciate you, man. And I can't call you Eric anymore. I'm from D.C., so Eric Carter. Again, that's Eric Carter. What's going on? Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Eric, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. We appreciate you. Oh, and my homeboy. This is Mark Allen Kennedy. I call him Jelani Knox, my main man. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A dear family friend and a personal brother of mine. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And you might want to jump on this, Mark. I'm talking about poverty economics today. For those that don't know, Mark is heavily involved in the Virginia Democratic Party, and particularly in Northern Virginia. A diligent brother, an entrepreneur. Much love to Mark and his family. And thank you for coming on the show, bro. We're going to get to this a little bit. So the topic, if you will, is poverty economics. And I say discussing poverty economics because dissecting it could be a larger show. But what I learned comes from the comedy world. It comes from the comedy world. There was a situation where there was a comedy club in Milwaukee. It pretty much had to run of the show. It had to run of the city. If you wanted to do comedy in this particular place, then what you had to do was you had to perform here. You could do little small rooms around the city, but the main spot was a spot called the Comedy Cafe. They ran it like a gangster joint. If you want to know for facts, they ran like a gangster joint. My friend JD Daniels, I hope you're doing well. But what was interesting was another club popped up. Another club popped up. And instead of competing straight ahead, what they did was threaten the other comics that if you worked at this club, that it would affect your ability to work at their club. And not only affected the ability to work at their club, but they called the other clubs around the city all the way into Illinois, whereby if you worked at this one club, you would effectively shut yourself out from doing, 5, 6, 7 other clubs. Now, people say, what does this mean? This is comedy. It means a lot if you're a local comedian. If you're a local comedian working in a local market, what it means that if you have flexibility, if you have talent, your talent is somehow restrained, number one, in terms of where you show your wares, the marketplace, but also number two, and this is a deep one, you are now refrained from where you're going to work in that area. Meaning that talent does not mean anything it doesn't mean anything over my mobility. And let me tell you what mobility means. For the comedian, when you start out, every comedian you saw start out in a local spot, okay? If you start out in Milwaukee, you work in Milwaukee in the Midwest. The big city, of course, would be Chicago. And from Chicago, if you did well, you went to the coast, either, LA or New York. DC, you work the coast, you go up to New York, or you go to the coast. You see what I'm saying? But you built your brand in that space. What happens if people retard your ability to build your brand in that space? Certain things happen. Number one, your assuredness of being able to work where you need to and build your skill is now affected. Number two, if you're following this vein of thought, if you will, and you're not working the other clubs because you're afraid of one club, what happens, brothers and sisters, is your marketability goes down and your ability to price yourself goes down. And what am I saying? I'm going to say this, and anybody can jump in. Conceptually, what happened during the pandemic 2020 and into 2021 was the fact that Black businesses, brothers and sisters, took a hit. Now, this is significant, but what's even more significant is that Black businesses took a hit when they had the housing crisis under Obama. That's when he had the TARP program. And a lot of those businesses never came back. And while we lament the idea of these businesses not coming back, we don't really look at the overreaching effect that it happens. The fact that people are able to employ themselves. See, when you can employ yourself, you can do things like price your goods, price your services. You can be competitive. You can negotiate. The absence of that, brothers and sisters, leaves where we are now with a lot of people who are going, I'm not going back to a job. Because going back to that particular job is devoid of these things that we just said. Not being able to negotiate, no union, no being able to figure out your wages, your hours. I can't tell you how many people talk to me going, my full-time week contains, 39 and a half hours, 39 hours that I'm getting paid full-time. And not being paid that full-time, brothers and sisters, means that they're not getting benefits, they're not getting retirement. And this is what feeds into what I call the poverty economics. The poverty economics is essentially that you make enough, but you don't make all of what you need to be able to do things in terms of changing your life, to effectively going out and having mobility in terms of your decision, your financing. Businesses today, brothers and sisters, have a different strategy. You see, back in the day, if it was a car, you say, hey, listen, it was a car company. Your job was to build a better car, right? Ford, Chevy, Volkswagen. Back in the day, they competed on cars. They competed on American taste. These days, brothers and sisters, because we don't have the manufacturing that we do, or we used to, what we have now is a different philosophy whereby people invest in strategies, invest in tactics that have nothing to do with competition. It has to do with strategically taking people out of the marketplace. Things like acquisitions, things like mergers, and you hear these words over and over and over again. You know, I have to make sure that I stay on topic because it happens all the time. It happens all the time. Inner city politics, and I say inner city politics, but also inner city economics, has always struggled from the fact that people have invested in there being a status of poverty economics. Think about housing. Think about the importance of housing. We've talked about this before, but the importance of housing over renting a house. Owning a house versus renting a house. What are the differences? Renting has no equity. Owning a house means that you can negotiate on things. You can take money out of your house. You can sell your house. You can't sell a rental property. And while I'm saying it's very, very simple, brothers and sisters, this is a very complex thing. Because if you look at the laws, brothers and sisters, housing, things like that, one of the biggest things that happened was that African Americans in particular have been denied the access and the pathway to things like housing. How do you do that? We deny them access to loans. How do you do that? Well, you stick them in jobs where you know that they're not going to be able to come with the money they need, or if they come with some of the money they need, it's based on a predatory relationship. We know that you can't afford this house, but we're going to give it to you, understanding that the houses are going to break you, and at the end, you would have paid this money, and at the end of the default, we're going to get the house back. Anyway, poverty economics. The other space about poverty economics, brothers and sisters, largely has to do with public education. Stick with me here. When I say poverty education, I meant to say poverty economics, but it's almost a Freudian slip. One of the things that happened in a lot of inner city schools was this whole idea that somehow inner city schools could not produce quality education. And it was an indictment on teachers, saying that it couldn't attract quality teachers. Untrue. The idea of vouchers, brothers and sisters, is one of the most insidious aspects of doing poverty economics, because what they did was they removed the functionality of a tax base. Let me tell you what I mean. In Milwaukee, after charter schools, after the voucher program started, actually in Minneapolis, it came down to Milwaukee. And there was a big hoorah of, hey, these schools all of a sudden are not up to snuff. Herein the introduction of state testing and things like that, all of a sudden the schools are not up to snuff. And being up to snuff, they introduced the idea that people, parents, you can now choose where you're going to send your children. The ironic part was you're choosing where to send your children, but you're not looking at this fact that that choice is taking money out of your space. They went in and explained that anyway. But what happened was they took money out of the public school system and they put it in the program school system. In Milwaukee, it was the archdiocese schools who were dying, brothers and sisters. They were dying. Nobody was going to those schools. They had the kids come to the schools. Schools weren't equipped to deal with their problems. They didn't have resource teachers. They didn't have speech teachers. They didn't have behavior manager specialists. And what happens is they got rid of the kids, but they kept the money from the student allotment and they sent the kids back broke to a broken system. It overburdened the system. And after about 2-3 years, the Milwaukee public school system was extremely compromised. But Milwaukee was not the only one. See, when you go around the city these days, you see a lot of what I say, charter schools. And they're good, and they're good. And people say, hey, the charter school, they're in the neighborhood, but they're privately owned. These are for-profit schools, which means that their revenue does not go back to the state. However, the state does fund it. What happens if You are a community or a city or a block, you have a tax base and you give it away and you get nothing back in return for your tax base. That is a form of poverty economics. The other part of this equation, if you will, is the fact that not being able to produce the quality education, the quality education that the kids deserve, the quality of teachers that they deserve, what happens is you now churn out a poor student, not a dumb student, not a dumb student, not a talented student, but they've turned out and they're ill prepared. Now, let me throw this out here and anybody can jump in. It's not only being ill prepared, but that same student is, guess what? Compared to all the other students who had all the opportunities without having all the burdens of that particular student. So for those of you who know me and know I taught, that was one of the reasons why I never went out in the suburbs and taught. I stayed right near in the city because this was the hustle that was going on. So you say, well, Preach, what is the other scope of poverty economics? Well, you can thank Walmart, people like Walmart and the Rockefellers and things like that. Because what they did, they invested in a lot of regards. They invested in education, but it wasn't investing in education. It was the ability to modify and have influence over education, not only for their kids, but for your kids. The school down the street that's not performing or underperforming, you can thank people like that. The high school that doesn't have books, you can think that. All the schools that lost their music programs, you can start thinking about things like that. Because what you began to produce on top of it are students, young girls, young boys are growing, and young men and young women who are not properly prepared for the marketplace. If you have a job that begins at the fact that you have to have a 4-year degree and you didn't finish high school, or you finished high school, you have a GED, but you didn't have the opportunities, the apparatus, and the opportunities, and when I say opportunities, um, the means, if you will. The government didn't provide what they need to provide. The grants weren't there. This happens all the time. What happens is you produce a workforce that can't leverage, that can't have a vertical strategy, because to get in a conversation about this job or that job, you must have a 4-year degree. It happens all the time now. Even with people who have degrees, they begin to understand, wait a minute, the difference now between the 4-year degree and the master's might be anywhere from $30 to $40 to $50,000. And it's a whole different conversation. What's happening with poverty economics is that people are not having that conversation. I say this, and this is without any bad feeling, I'm not being racist, but I'm going to tell you this, that African Americans are a miracle in the context of evolution here in the United States. Modern miracle. You're talking about a people that generally are not supposed to be here. We've marveled and developed strategies and idioms whereby we can somehow override poverty economics. We've done it over and over and over again. But each time we build a school, each time we change the law, each time we build up our economies, the people who tried to deny us in the first place, guess what they do? They develop strategies to make sure that they don't compete with us. So they buy our businesses. So they buy our ideas. So they buy our concepts. Did I say buy? Okay, so they stole rap music. They stole jazz. They stole hip hop. Now you begin to understand what I'm talking about. This whole framework of poverty economics, it goes back to slave days. Just the mental hardship of an owner or overseer or a poor white looking at an African American going, I did every damn thing I could do to break them, and there they are, still surviving and succeeding. So, brothers and sisters, even these days, if you will, even these days, some days I look out, I'm on concrete, but it feels like a plantation. I look at young guys and then some of their parents, because I'm old enough. I look at some guys, some of their parents, and I said, damn, that poverty economics is killing them. And you're going to preach what you're talking about. That young guy has on $300 sneakers. He got an earring and it's a gold and a diamond earring, and he got a nice car. But that's it. That's it. He's not in the category or the conversation of ownership. What good is all this money? As a friend of mine told me, what good is all this money if you can't go buy a house? If you can't invest in education for your kids, what good is it? It's a great question. What good is it poverty economics, brothers and sisters? We're not talking about this enough. We're still talking about prosperity economics. Stop. In the churches, stop. In the masjid, stop. Stop talking about the things that are killing us in a way that you think this is our pathway to be successful. Sometimes it's not enough to be successful for yourself. You got to be successful for the people behind you. Picking up some of these veritable breadcrumbs, brothers and sisters, is the thing that makes us special. I say breadcrumbs because nobody ever gave us a full loaf. And everybody knows when you pick up breadcrumbs, if you put them all together, you're not going to get bread. You're going to get a lot of crumbs. Well, then, damn it, we need to be able to be meticulous about which crumbs we take and which crumbs we talk about and which crumbs we lay down for other people. That, brothers and sisters, is the functionality of the crumb. So I'm going to get out of here because I know we have some people that might want to say, but I want everybody to think about this conversation about poverty economics. I didn't say being poor. I talked about poverty. There's some people who are millionaires, but for millionaires, they're dealing with poverty. So I railed on a little bit. We have some comments, Satana. Let's go ahead and throw them up. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and wrap up. Okay, we got no comments. Okay. We have a new number, actually, for our sponsor. We have a new number. I have not committed the number to memory. So please bear with me, brothers and sisters. I just got it today. So we have a new number for BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. So bear with me. I tell everybody, if you're talking about finances, getting your money right, getting your bag straight, listen, stop talking about it, be about it. Talk to people who are in that space. And I'm going to suggest, of course, www.BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinancialIndependent.com. If you don't want to go to the website, the new number is 202-508-3780. Satana, did you get that one? 202-508-3780 for BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Okay. So we're going to have that one. All right. Now, if you're interested in getting a quality Islamic graduate education, brothers and sisters, there you go. We got the new number. You're on top of it, Satana. Thank you. If you're interested in getting a quality Islamic graduate education, or even at the doctoral level, you got to check out Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Go to bayanonline.org. Again, that's bayanonline.org. Check out some of the programs that they have there. They have amazing programs. They've actually expanded, so it's more than when I was there. Islamic education and Islamic leadership and Islamic studies. Of course, one of the pre-med programs, the Master of Divinity, with a specialty in Muslim chaplaincy. You got to check it out, bayanonline.org. And we want to give a shout out to our newest sponsor, Convenient Urgent Care. Convenient Urgent Care here in the city of Houston. Again, that's Convenient Urgent Care in the city of Houston. Go to convenienturgent.com. Again, that's convenienturgent.com. All right, so listen, you guys have been great. I appreciate you. Do me a favor, though. This subject of poverty economics, I really, really want you to think about what I was talking about. Like, I really want you to think about it. And I want you to look at how Black businesses, minority businesses are being treated right now. Not really hearing a lot of it, a lot of rumbling about it. Number one, because a lot of them are gone now. They said, again, the Obama era with the TARP program and all the housing issues, 71% of African-American Black-owned businesses didn't come back online. And they said in 2020, What's left of that, 40% of black businesses didn't come back online. So you do the math. Do the math. And I want you to be diligent and start talking about this topic to people around you. You know, the way you can reverse it is make sure that this isn't a thing that's happening to people in isolated spaces. You know, the more we talk about it, the more we can have a continuum in terms of how we deal with it, you know, taking power to the people and saying these are the things that's going on. We can't be out there on a whim by ourselves. All right. So listen, that's it, brothers and sisters. I hope you guys didn't mind me setting up the camera this way. It happens sometimes. You know, I'm not perfect, and I know I'm not perfect, and sometimes I am darn sure forgetful. So I hope you guys like the show. It's me, Preacher Monster. Shout out, show. I appreciate you guys coming on. Inshallah, I will see you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shout out.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say, I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the Shout Out Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30 on the Central Time. And of course, we're going to do our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, time for you to go, because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out.